as well as a big Senate race. And as Chase has already alluded to, it is getting national attention. And I'm so proud to have our U.S. Senate candidates here tonight. And the first one will be John Stephensons. So John, come on up. Each candidate has 5 minutes to speak.
Well, I'm walking just a little bit slower than I used to as a young man. Back in the days of Simon Kenton, when I was the fastest in high school in 100, 220, and 440. But with carrying this little baggage around, it's a little slower. But I still seem to make it there. And that's probably because the stock I came from was Grant County. My mother and father, Garnett, Bingham, my father, Alton Stephenson, who threw a mighty mean fastball himself, Chalk Stephenson, came from Flat Creek. My mother came from down Mount Zion. I was down there singing not too long ago in a little Mount Zion Baptist church, singing the song, I'd Rather Have Jesus. You know, May the 6th is the National Day of Prayer, and Franklin Graham is going to be leading it. I hope he can lead it all over the country, because you know something? That's what this country needs to do. Not make a right turn, not make a left turn, but make a U-turn to God. And that's how I was trained by the Binghams. You know, my cousin became rather famous, Roger Bingham. But I wrote the song and sang it for him called Kentucky Joe that played all over America and Canada. Someone asked me about it tonight, and I said, his name is Roger Bingham, they call him Kentucky Joe. He hails from Grant County, but Crittenden is his home. A-traveling to the outback, old Roger he did go, surviving in Australia on that TV show. And you know something? What he took with him on that TV show was one item you were allowed to bring with you. It was his Bible. It was his Bible. Now tonight, I asked a good congressman, who, by the way, I sang for when he first ran for Congress. And by the way, I think he's doing one heck of a job in Washington, D.C., because you know why? He has an open mind to look at all sides of an issue, and he has principles. Now, I might not agree with him on every issue. Probably don't. But I'll tell you one thing. He's like my old boss, John Breckenridge. I could lay my head down at night and know that he was doing exactly what he thought was right for America. I liked working for Congressman John Breckenridge, and I was his field representative all through this whole area of northern Kentucky. I'm your former superintendent of education. I'm your former deputy secretary of transportation and commissioner of motor vehicles. And I can honestly tell you that as a Democrat, or now as a Republican, no one has ever owned John Stephensson. I've not broken any laws, and when they came to me and wanted me to break laws, I looked them back in the eye and I said, find yourself another fellow. That's not why I came down here. And I'll give you just one for instance. When I walked in as Secretary of Transportation, and they had this big meeting, all the consultants there. And I sat down with them and they said, where do you want the road to go, John? And I said, who are you guys? Well, we're consulting engineers. And I said, where should the road to go? That's what we're paying you guys for. I said, come back to the next meeting and tell me where the road ought to go. Well, what about the politicians? I said, you let me deal with the politicians. I want to know where the road should go, not what some politician wants it to go. And I said, that's your job. That's why we're paying you. And that's the way I ran my office, and that's the way I run any office in government I've ever been in. I've never looked at a person's religion. I've never looked at a person's party affiliation or his ethnicity. I've looked at them as human beings and constituents, and I've worked my heart out for them because you know why? God brought me into this world not as a minister, but as a public servant. A public servant. Now I'm running this campaign on less than $5,000, and there's a purpose for that. I've yet to ask the first person for a single contribution. This country needs to turn away from greed. Right today, 6 banks in this country, even after all the bailouts, 6 banks control 60% of the nation's wealth. This nation cannot go through another bailout scenario. Terrible mistake. When any industry or corporation or insurance company or bank gets too big to fail, we've made a terrible mistake in this country. The little man on Main Street needs to be treated the same way as the big shot on Wall Street, fairly, justly. Now, we had a Baptist minister give a prayer. My family were Baptist ministers, many of them down here in the Binghams, my mom and dad. Well, being Baptist won't stop you from sinning, but it'll certainly stop you from enjoying it. Now, I'm here running for the United States Senate, and I want to ask you sincerely, or when you get into that voting booth, it's just you and God. Now, half the people in here probably are already committed to somebody else, might be leaning that way, but when you get into that voting booth, it's you and God. I'm taking a message to Washington. It's a godly message. It's a message we need to turn to God. 2 Chronicles 7:14, seek his face, turn from our wicked ways, change our lives, and then he will heal our land. That's really the story, that's really the message, and that's really what I'm all about. It isn't against my other opponents. It's against the stones of greed and power and money. And you know, little David, with his 5 little stones, it only took one of them to bring Goliath down. The Goliath in this country is greed. It isn't Democrats, it isn't Republicans, and it isn't independents. Laws won't change it. We need to look in the face of the mirror and look at ourselves and change ourselves back to godly ways. That's what it's all about. My name's John Stephenson. My parents were from Grant County. I love you. God bless you.
Our Secretary of State, Trey Grayson, couldn't be here with us tonight. There's a lot of Lincoln Day dinners going on, but his wife, Nancy, has so graciously agreed to come. So Nancy, come on up.